Hello there, and welcome to this quiet corner where curiosity gets cozy and science takes the scenic route to slumber. I'm your sleepy scientist, and tonight we're going on perhaps the most extraordinary journey you'll ever take, a journey into the very fabric of your reality itself. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is right now. Are you tucked under blankets as evening settles in? Perhaps you're watching the world wake up from the other side of the globe. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, you're about to discover something that will forever change how you experience. This very moment, you might think you're simply listening to my voice right now, seeing the world around you exactly as it is. But the truth is far more extraordinary than you could ever imagine. What you're experiencing as reality, the colors you see, the sounds you hear, even the feeling of your own body. None of it exists the way you think it does, right now. As you listen to these words, your brain is performing the most magnificent magic trick in the universe. It's taking meaningless electrical impulses, tiny sparks of energy no different from the electricity powering your phone, and somehow transforming them into the rich, vivid, three-dimensional world you call reality. But here's where the story takes a turn that will shock you to your core. In 1998, Dr. Anil Seth was working with a patient named Sarah, a woman who had been completely blind for over a decade due to severe damage to her visual cortex. Sarah lived in total darkness, her world composed entirely of sounds, textures, and smells. But on this particular Tuesday morning, something impossible was about to happen. Dr. Seth placed a device against Sarah's skull, a machine that could send magnetic pulses directly into her brain tissue. He activated the device, targeting the exact spot where her visual cortex should have been processing sight, if only it still could. And then Sarah gasped. She was seeing light. Brilliant, beautiful flashes of color were dancing across her vision. For the first time in over 10 years. But here's the part that changed everything we thought we knew about human perception. Sarah's eyes weren't working. Her optic nerves were damaged beyond repair. The visual information wasn't coming from the outside world at all. Her brain was creating the experience of sight from nothing but electrical stimulation. Dr. Seth realized in that moment that he wasn't just treating a blind patient. He was witnessing proof of something that would revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. If Sarah's brain could create the vivid experience of seeing light without any input from her eyes, what did that say about your vision right now? What did it say about every single thing you think you're perceiving? Scientists recently discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about perception. Your brain doesn't just passively receive information about the world. It actively constructs every single thing you experience. The red of an apple, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of rain, these aren't properties of the world itself. They're masterful creations of your brain, painted onto a canvas of pure electrical activity. Here's something that will blow your mind. You've never actually seen anything, not really. You've never heard a sound, never felt a texture, never tasted a flavor. Everything you think you know about the world has been manufactured inside your skull, in a dark, silent chamber that has never directly experienced anything at all. Your brain is like the ultimate virtual reality system. But instead of showing you a computer-generated world, it's showing you, well, everything. Every sunset you've ever admired, every face you've ever loved, every song that's ever moved you, all of it created in the darkness of your mind. But Sarah's story doesn't end there. What Dr. Seth discovered next was so disturbing, so fundamentally challenging to everything we believe about reality, that it took him 3 years to publish his findings. Because if the brain could create sight where none existed, if it could generate entire sensory experiences from pure imagination, then how much of what you call reality might be nothing more than a convincing hallucination? The answer to that question will change everything you think you know about yourself, your world, and the nature of existence itself. Now I know what you're thinking. Wait, if my brain is creating everything, does that mean nothing is real? Don't worry, we're going to explore that question together. And I promise you'll come away with an even deeper appreciation for the miracle of consciousness. But first, we need to understand just how deep this rabbit hole goes. If you're enjoying this journey into the deepest mysteries of your mind, I'd love it if you could give this video a like. It helps other curious souls find their way to these peaceful explorations. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider joining our little community of wonder seekers. We're building something special here. What we're about to explore might just change how you see yourself, your relationships, and your place in the universe. We're going to peek behind the curtain of consciousness itself and discover how your brain, this 3-pound universe inside your head, creates the entire reality you call your life. You see, Dr. Seth's discovery with Sarah was just the beginning. What he found next would reveal that your brain isn't just creating occasional illusions or filling in small gaps in perception. It's creating everything. Every color exists only in your mind. Every sound is a translation your brain makes from vibrating air molecules. Every sensation is a story your neurons tell about electrical signals. And the most shocking part, your brain is so good at this reality creation that it's been fooling you your entire life. Right now, as I speak these words, your brain is showing you a version of reality that's almost entirely made up, and you have no idea it's happening, so get comfortable. Let your mind settle into that perfect state between waking and dreaming, and prepare to discover the most incredible story ever told, the story of how your brain creates your world. Because once you understand what's really happening inside your head, you'll never look at reality the same way again. The question is, are you ready to learn the truth about the world you think you're living in? Foundation and Basic ISIO and CIATN, 1928. A scientist made a mistake that changed everything we thought we knew about the human brain. Dr. Hans Berger was trying to measure brain activity using primitive electrodes, hoping to find evidence of telepathy. What he discovered instead was something far more extraordinary as he watched the electrical patterns dancing across his equipment. Berger realized he was seeing the first glimpses of how the brain actually creates our experience of reality. The rhythmic waves of electricity he was recording weren't just random neural noise. They were the signature of consciousness itself, the electrical symphony that composes every moment of your lived experience. But what Berger found was just the beginning of an even more incredible story. To understand how your brain creates reality, we need to start with a fact that might seem obvious, but is actually revolutionary. Your brain is completely isolated from the outside world. It sits in total darkness, wrapped in protective membranes, sealed inside your skull. It has never directly experienced sunlight, never felt the wind, never heard music. Think about that for a moment. The organ that creates your entire experience of the world has never actually touched that world. All your brain ever receives are electrical signals, streams of ones and zeros, if you will, traveling along neural pathways. When light hits your eye, it doesn't travel to your brain as light. It gets converted into electrical impulses. When sound waves hit your ear, they don't travel to your brain as sound waves. they become electrical signals. Touch, taste, smell. Everything gets converted into the same basic currency, electrical activity. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in a completely dark, soundproof room, and the only way you can learn about the outside world is through a telegraph machine. The telegraph can only send you dots and dashes, Morse code. But somehow, from these simple dots and dashes, you have to construct an entire three-dimensional full-color, surround sound movie of reality. That's exactly what your brain does, except, instead of dots and dashes, it's working with electrical impulses. And instead of creating a simple message, it's creating everything. The feeling of your clothes against your skin, the color of the sky, the taste of your morning coffee, the love you feel for your family. But here's where it gets really mind-bending. Your brain doesn't just passively decode these electrical signals. It actively interprets them, adds to them, and sometimes completely makes things up. You'd expect your brain to work like a camera, simply recording what's out there. But nature does something far more sophisticated. Your brain is more like a master artist and storyteller combined. It takes these raw electrical signals and weaves them into a coherent narrative, the story of your life, the story of your world. And it's so good at this that you never even notice. It's happening right now as you listen to these words. Your brain is receiving electrical signals from your ears, but it's not just playing them back like a tape recorder. It's identifying them as human speech, recognizing the language, understanding the meaning, and even adding emotional coloring based on your past experiences and current mood. Your visual system is even more creative. The image you think you're seeing clearly and completely is actually mostly filled in by your brain's predictions and assumptions. You have a blind spot in each eye where your optic nerve connects to your retina, but you never notice it because your brain seamlessly fills in the missing information. But here's the part that will completely change how you think about perception. Your brain is constantly making educated guesses about what's out there, and then presenting those guesses to you as if they were absolute facts. It's like having a personal assistant who's incredibly good at their job but never tells you when. They're making assumptions on your behalf. Remember Dr. Seth's patient Sarah? After that first breakthrough with the magnetic stimulation, he conducted hundreds more experiments. He discovered that he could make Sarah see not just random flashes of light, but specific shapes, colors, even faces that existed nowhere except in the electrical patterns he was creating in her brain. In one unforgettable session, Sarah began to cry. The magnetic stimulation had triggered something unexpected. She was seeing her mother's face, as clear and vivid as if her mother were standing right in front of her. But her mother had died 5 years earlier. The face Sarah was seeing existed only in her neural networks, a memory so powerfully reconstructed that her brain experienced it as current reality. This wasn't just a touching moment of technological wonder. It was proof of something that shook the foundations of neuroscience. If Sarah's brain could create the experience of seeing her deceased mother with such clarity and emotional impact, how much of what you experience as real memory versus current perception might be far more blurred than you ever imagined. Let me give you a thought experiment that will help you feel this process in action. Imagine you could watch your brain creating your reality in real time, like watching a movie being made frame by frame. Picture this. You're walking through a garden and you see a beautiful red rose. In the world of physics, there's no such thing as the color red. There are only electromagnetic waves of different frequencies bouncing off objects. The rose is absorbing most wavelengths of light and reflecting back waves that are approximately 700 nanometers long. These waves hit your eye and trigger specific cells in your retina, which convert the light into electrical signals. These signals travel up your optic nerve, not as color, not as red, just as patterns of electrical activity. When they reach your visual cortex, something magical happens. Your brain takes these electrical patterns and somehow, through processes we still don't fully understand, creates the experience of red. Not just any red, but a particular shade of red that seems to glow with warmth and beauty. Your brain adds emotional associations, perhaps memories of roses you've given or received, the feeling of romance, the scent of a garden in summer. But here's the mind-bending part. That specific experience of red exists nowhere else in the universe except in your consciousness. Another person looking at the same rose might have a completely different internal experience of red, even though you'd both call it by the same name. The numbers are staggering when you really think about it. Your eyes are processing about 10 million bits of information every second, but your consciousness can only handle about 40 bits per second. That means your brain is filtering out 999% of the information available to it and using that tiny fraction to construct your entire experienced reality. And it's not just vision. Right now, your brain is creating the experience of your body existing in space, even though space as you experience it is another construction. It's creating the feeling of time passing, though time as you experience it bears little resemblance to time as physics describes it. But here's the part that will surprise you most. Your brain doesn't just create your experience of the outside world, it creates your experience of yourself. The feeling of being you, of having a body, of being a continuous person with a past and future, that's all brain generated as well. The voice in your head that you think of as your thoughts. That's your brain creating the experience of having thoughts. The sense that you're in control of your actions. That's your brain creating the experience of free will. Even your emotions aren't just felt. They're constructed by your brain based on physical sensations, memories, and predictions about what you should be feeling in any given situation. Dr. Seth's research team made another discovery that will fundamentally change how you understand your own existence. They found that the brain creates reality not just through what it includes, but through what it leaves out. Your brain is constantly editing your experience, removing information that doesn't fit its current story about what's happening. In one experiment, they showed people videos where objects would mysteriously disappear or change color mid-scene. Most people never notice these dramatic changes because their brains were so focused on maintaining a coherent narrative that they simply edited out anything that didn't make sense. This means that right now, as you experience this moment, your brain might be leaving out entire aspects of reality that don't fit its current predictions about what you should be experiencing. You're not just living in a constructed reality. You're living in an edited reality where your brain is the director, cinematographer, and editor all at once. But what happens when this sophisticated reality construction system encounters something it can't predict or explain? What happens when the brain's ability to create coherent experience breaks down? The answer to that question reveals something so fundamental about the nature of consciousness that it will change everything you think you know about what it means to be human. The mechanisms, how it walked. Star Ramachandran was having coffee in his laboratory when the call came in. A patient had arrived at the emergency room with the most bizarre complaint the doctors had ever heard. The man insisted that his left arm didn't belong to him. Not that it was paralyzed or injured, but that it literally wasn't his arm. He could see it, he could move it, But his brain was absolutely convinced that this perfectly functional limb was an imposter. What Ramachandran discovered when he examined this patient would reveal the most shocking truth about how your brain actually constructs reality. You'd think your brain works like a sophisticated recording device, carefully capturing and storing accurate information about the world, but actually, your brain works more like a prediction machine that's constantly making educated guesses about reality. The process starts with what neuroscientists call predictive processing. Your brain is constantly generating predictions about what it expects to sense next, based on everything it's learned throughout your life. These predictions aren't just passive expectations, they actively shape what you experience. Here's how it works. Before information from your senses even reaches your conscious awareness, your brain has already decided what it expects to find. When sensory information comes in, your brain doesn't just accept it at face value. Instead, it compares the incoming data to its predictions. If they match, your brain says, "Great, everything is as expected," and you experience a smooth, continuous reality. But if there's a mismatch, if reality doesn't match the prediction, your brain updates its model and creates what's called a prediction error. These prediction errors are actually the moments when you're most likely to consciously notice something. The bright flash of lightning, the unexpected sound of a door slamming, the surprise of recognizing a familiar face in a crowd. These are all prediction errors being processed right now in your body. This is happening thousands of times per second. Your brain is predicting the feel of your clothes, the temperature of the air, the position of your limbs. And when reality matches these predictions, you don't consciously notice them, but shift position slightly, and suddenly you become aware of your body as your brain updates its predictions. Your visual system is perhaps the most sophisticated example of this process. You might think your eyes work like cameras, but they're actually more like very smart sensors that sample tiny bits of information and pass them along to a brain that's already painted most of the picture. Your eyes make rapid movements called saccades, about 3 times per second, jumping from point to point. During each saccade, you're effectively blind, but you never notice these gaps because your brain predicts what should be there and fills in the missing information seamlessly. Even more remarkable is how your brain handles the fact that your retinas are essentially upside down. The image that hits your retina is inverted, but you never experience the world as upside down because your brain learned early in life to flip the image mentally. Some experiments have given people special glasses that invert their vision, and after a few days, their brains adapt and the world appears right side up again, even while wearing the inverting glasses. But let's return to Dr. Ramachandran's patient, the man who insisted his arm didn't belong to him. Through careful testing, Ramachandran discovered that the patient's brain had suffered damage to the area responsible for integrating sensory information about body ownership. The prediction systems that normally create the feeling of "this is my arm" had malfunctioned. What happened next changed everything we know about the flexibility of consciousness. The complexity of what your brain is doing becomes even more staggering when you consider that it's not just creating one unified reality, it's creating multiple, overlapping realities simultaneously, then seamlessly weaving them together. What if this process stopped for just 1 second? You'd experience something like what happens during certain types of seizures or strokes. Reality would fragment into disconnected pieces. Colors might separate from shapes. Sounds might disconnect from their sources. Your sense of self might scatter into unrecognizable fragments. Your brain has specialized regions for processing different aspects of reality. There's a what pathway that identifies objects, and a where pathway that tracks their location. There's a system for recognizing faces that's so specialized it can be damaged while leaving all other visual processing intact. There are circuits for processing the emotional significance of events, others for predicting future outcomes, and still others for maintaining your sense of being a continuous self. All of these systems are constantly communicating with each other, sharing information and predictions. The emotional centers influence what you notice and remember. The memory systems shape what you expect to see and hear. The language centers participate in organizing your thoughts and experiences into coherent narratives. But perhaps most remarkably, your brain creates the experience of all this happening now, in the present moment. In reality, all these neural processes take time. It takes about 500 milliseconds for visual information to be fully processed. And different aspects of that processing finish at different times. Yet you experience everything as happening simultaneously in a unified now. Your brain accomplishes this by constantly adjusting your experience of time itself. It speeds up or slows down your perception of duration. It fills in gaps. And it even sometimes shows you events in a different order than they actually occurred, all to maintain the illusion of a smooth, continuous present moment. This affects your daily life in ways you might never have imagined. The reason time seems to slow down in emergencies is because your brain is processing more information and creating more detailed predictions. The reason familiar routes seem shorter than unfamiliar ones isn't just psychological. Your brain is literally creating a different experience of duration based on how much new information it needs to process. Dr. Ramachandran decided to try something that seemed almost too simple to work. He built a box with mirrors inside it, positioned so that when his patient looked into the box, he could see the reflection of his right arm where his left arm should be. The moment the patient looked into the mirror box, something extraordinary happened. For the first time since his injury, he felt like both arms belonged to him. The visual illusion was so powerful that it completely overrode his brain's confused signals about body ownership. His brain saw what looked like two normal arms and instantly updated its model of his body. But the real breakthrough came when Ramachandran realized this technique could help patients with phantom limb pain. People who had lost arms or legs but still felt excruciating pain in their missing limbs. One patient, Marcus, had lost his left arm in a motorcycle accident 3 years earlier. Every day since the amputation, he had felt his missing hand clenched in an agonizing fist. No medication could touch this phantom pain because there was no physical hand to treat. When Marcus looked into the mirror box and saw the reflection of his right hand where his left hand should be, he could suddenly see his phantom hand. More incredibly, when he opened and closed his right hand while looking in the mirror, he felt his phantom hand opening and closing too. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt his phantom hand relax. The pain that had tormented him daily simply vanished. His brain was so convinced by the visual illusion that it updated its entire model of his body. This wasn't just a clever trick. It revealed something profound about the nature of your body image. The feeling of having a body, of knowing where your limbs are, of experiencing your boundaries as a person. All of this is constructed by your brain, and it can be altered, updated, or even completely reimagined. And that's when researchers realized something even more remarkable. If the brain could be fooled about something as basic as whether you have an arm or not, what else might it be constructing that we take for granted? What other aspects of reality might be more malleable than we ever imagined? Recent experiments have shown that you can create the illusion of having a third arm, or make people feel like they're inhabiting someone else's body, or even create the experience of being in two places at once. The brain's model of reality is far more flexible and creative than we ever suspected. This discovery opened up an entirely new understanding of consciousness itself. If your brain is constructing your experience of having a body, and it can be wrong about something that fundamental, then what is the relationship between the reality your brain creates and the reality that actually exists out there? And more importantly, which reality is more real to you, the one physics describes, or the one your brain creates for you to live in? The answer to that question leads us to discoveries so profound they challenge everything we think we know about the nature of existence itself. Scale and conec. Susanna Herculano Housel was washing dishes in her kitchen when she had the realization that would revolutionize our understanding of the human brain. She was thinking about a problem that had puzzled neuroscientists for decades. How many neurons does the human brain actually contain? The textbooks all said roughly 100 billion, but no one had ever actually counted them. The brain was simply too complex, too densely packed with cells to count accurately. But as she scrubbed a particularly stubborn pot, Herculano Housel had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. What if she could dissolve entire brains into soup? To truly appreciate the magnitude of what your brain is doing, let's talk about scale. If you could shrink down to the size of a molecule and travel through your brain, you'd find yourself in a universe so vast and complex it would make the observable cosmos seem simple by comparison. Using her brain soup technique, Hercules made a discovery that shocked the scientific world. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons. That's more than 12 times the number of people who have ever lived on Earth. Each of these neurons can connect to thousands of others, creating a network with more possible connections than there are stars in the known universe. We are talking about 100 trillion connections, each one capable of strengthening or weakening, creating or destroying pathways of information. But the numbers become even more staggering when you consider the speed at which all this is happening. Information travels through your brain at speeds up to 268 miles per hour, and your neurons can fire up to 1,000 times per second. At any given moment, billions of neural conversations are happening simultaneously, all contributing to the creation of your reality. To put this in perspective, if each neural connection in your brain were a person, and each person could talk to 1,000 others simultaneously, you'd have a social network so complex that every conversation happening on Earth right now would be just a tiny fraction of the communication happening in your head as you listen to these words. The energy consumption is equally remarkable. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your body weight. It's like a city of 86 billion inhabitants, all working around the clock, consuming resources at an incredible rate to maintain the illusion of reality. When you consider timescales, the picture becomes even more amazing. Some neural processes happen in milliseconds, the time it takes for you to recognize a face or jump back from a threat. Others unfold over seconds, like the process of forming a new memory or solving a problem. Still others take minutes, hours, or even years. Like learning a new skill or recovering from brain injury, your brain is simultaneously operating on all these timescales at once. While you're consciously thinking about what you'll have for dinner tonight, your brain is also processing the feeling of air on your skin, monitoring your heart rate, maintaining your balance, consolidating memories from earlier today, and predicting what you'll need to pay attention to in the next few seconds. The spatial scales are equally at the molecular level. Neurotransmitter molecules are crossing synaptic gaps that are only 20 nanometers wide. That's about 2,000 times smaller than the width of a human hair. At the other extreme, some neural networks span the entire brain, connecting regions that are several inches apart, a vast distance at the cellular level. Right now, as you process these words, the activity in your brain is coordinated across multiple scales simultaneously. Individual molecules are binding to receptors. Cells are firing in coordinated patterns. Brain regions are communicating with each other. And somehow, all of this microscopic activity is creating your macroscopic experience of understanding language and contemplating ideas. But Dr. Herculano Housel's discoveries revealed something even more extraordinary about the connections in your brain. Your brain doesn't create reality in isolation. It's intimately connected to every other system in your body, and these connections shape your experience in ways you might never have imagined. Your gut, for instance, contains more neurons than your spinal cord, about 500 million of them. This second brain is constantly sending information up to your head brain through the vagus nerve, influencing your mood, your decisions, and even your personality. The phrase gut feeling is literally accurate. Your intestines are participating in the creation of your emotional reality. Your heart isn't just a pump. It's also a complex neural network that sends more information to your brain than it receives. Your heart rate variability affects your ability to make decisions, feel empathy, and regulate emotions. When your brain creates the experience of feeling heartbroken or lighthearted, it's reflecting real physiological connections between your cardiovascular system and your consciousness. Your immune system is also part of this network. Immune cells can cross the blood-brain barrier and directly influence neural activity. When you're fighting off an infection, your brain doesn't just receive signals about illness. It actually changes how it processes reality. Colors might seem less vivid, sounds might feel harsher, and your emotional responses might be dampened. Your immune system is literally helping to paint your conscious experience, even your microbiome. The trillions of bacteria living in and on your body plays a role in creating your reality. These microorganisms produce neurotransmitters and other chemicals that influence your brain function. Different bacterial populations are associated with different personality traits, stress responses, and even mental health conditions. The connections extend beyond your body too. Your brain is constantly responding to subtle environmental cues, changes in air pressure, electromagnetic fields, seasonal light patterns that you're not consciously aware of, but that nonetheless influence how your reality feels and unfolds. This is why your experience of reality can change so dramatically with changes in your physical state. When you're well rested, well fed, and healthy, your brain creates a different version of reality than when you're tired, hungry, or ill. Same world, same sensory inputs, but a fundamentally different experienced reality. But here's where the story takes an even more remarkable turn. Dr. Herculano Housel made another discovery that changed everything we thought we knew about human consciousness. When she applied her brain soup technique to other species, she found something that shook the foundations of neuroscience. Elephants have more neurons than humans. Whales have even more. But here's the crucial difference. Most of their neurons are in their cerebellum, the part of the brain that coordinates movement and balance. Humans have something unique. We have the highest concentration of neurons in our cerebral cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thinking, planning, and consciousness. This discovery revealed that it's not just the number of neurons that matters for creating complex reality, it's how they're organized and connected. Your brain has achieved something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. It has organized itself in such a way that it can not only create reality, but it can think about the reality it's creating. You're not just conscious, you're conscious of being conscious. You can observe your own thoughts, question your own experiences, and wonder about the nature of consciousness itself. This means that right now, as you contemplate these ideas, you're participating in something that may be unique in the universe. Your brain is using its reality-creating powers to examine its own reality-creating powers. Your consciousness studying consciousness, awareness investigating awareness. The third wonder moment comes when you realize that this means your reality is not just created by your brain, it's created by your entire integrated biological system, interacting with the environment. You're not just a brain in a skull. You're a walking, breathing, living reality generation system. But the most extraordinary discovery was yet to come. Dr. Herculano Hausel found that the human brain's ability to create complex reality isn't just about having lots of neurons. It's about having neurons that can form incredibly flexible, dynamic connections with each other. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself, creating new connections, strengthening some pathways while weakening others. Every experience you have, every thought you think, every emotion you feel literally changes the physical structure of your brain. You're not just experiencing reality, you're continuously reshaping the very system that creates your reality. This means that your consciousness is not a fixed thing. It's a dynamic, evolving process. The reality your brain creates for you today is different from the reality it created yesterday, and it will be different again tomorrow. You're not just living in a constructed reality, you're living in a reality that's constantly under construction. What we're about to discover next will reveal that this construction process has a history, a story of how humans gradually learned to create increasingly sophisticated versions of reality. And that story begins with a mistake that changed everything: historical perspective. And Diasovi, or why the railroad crew thought Phineas Gage was dead. It was September 13th, 1848, and they had just witnessed something no human being should survive. An explosion had driven a 3-foot iron rod completely through Gage's skull, entering below his left eye and exiting through the top of his head. The rod landed 30 feet away, covered in blood and brain tissue. But then Phineas Gage sat up and started talking. The journey to understanding how the brain creates reality began with a series of remarkable accidents and curious observations that changed everything we thought we knew about consciousness. Gage not only survived his impossible injury, he walked to the medical tent under his own power and calmly described what had happened to him. Dr. John Harlow, the physician who treated him, was amazed that Gage was not only alive but seemingly normal. His speech was clear, his memory intact, his reasoning abilities unimpaired. But as the weeks passed, Dr. Harlow began to notice something deeply disturbing. The man who returned to work was no longer Phineas Gage. His family and friends said he was no longer Gage. His personality had completely changed. Where he had once been responsible and kind, he was now impulsive and crude. Where he had been reliable and thoughtful, he was now erratic and profane. The iron rod had destroyed parts of his frontal cortex, and with it, something fundamental about who he was, his reality, his values, his social behavior. His very sense of self had been fundamentally altered by physical changes to his brain. This was the first hint that the mind and brain weren't separate entities, but that consciousness itself was somehow created by neural activity. It would take another 150 years to understand how the next breakthrough came from an unlikely source: patients undergoing brain surgery for severe epilepsy. In the 1950s, neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield made a startling discovery. When he stimulated different parts of the brain with electrical probes, patients would experience vivid hallucinations. They would see flashes of light, hear music, smell roses, or even relive entire memories as if they were happening in the present moment. One patient, when a particular spot in her temporal lobe was stimulated, would always hear the same song, so clearly and completely that she thought there was a radio playing in the operating room. Another would smell her mother's perfume and feel transported back to childhood. These weren't just memories, they were full, complete experiences indistinguishable from reality. Dr. Penfield realized he wasn't just mapping the brain, he was discovering the physical locations where experience itself was generated. Each zap of his electrode was artificially creating elements of reality in his patient's consciousness. But the real eureka moment came in the 1980s, when researchers began studying patients who had suffered specific types of brain damage. They discovered patients who could see objects but couldn't recognize them, patients who could recognize faces but couldn't see motion, and patients who were blind but insisted they could see perfectly well. One of the most famous cases was a woman known as DF, who suffered carbon monoxide poisoning that damaged her visual cortex. She couldn't consciously see shapes or objects. If you showed her a slot in a piece of wood, she couldn't tell you whether it was horizontal or vertical. But if you asked her to mail a letter through the slot, her hand would automatically orient the envelope correctly. Her brain was processing visual information and using it to guide her actions. But it wasn't creating the conscious experience of seeing. This revealed something revolutionary. Consciousness wasn't just one thing happening in one place. It was multiple processes happening in different brain regions. And the feeling of unified, coherent experience was itself a construction. A story the brain tells itself about what it's doing. And that's when they realized that what we call reality isn't a passive recording of the world. It's an active, creative process. The brain doesn't just receive information, it interprets, edits, and constructs experience moment by moment. Dr. Antonio Damasio encountered a patient who would change everything we understood about the relationship between emotion and reality. The patient, whom he called Elliot, had undergone surgery to remove a brain tumor. The surgery was successful, the tumor was gone, and Elliot's intelligence remained completely intact. But something fundamental had changed. Elliot could no longer feel emotions. Not sadness, not joy, not fear, not love. He described his condition like watching a movie of his own life, intellectually understanding what was happening but feeling nothing about any of it. But here's what shocked Dr. Damasio. Without emotions, Elliot couldn't make decisions. Not big, life-changing decisions, but simple, everyday choices. He would spend hours deciding which restaurant to go to, weighing endless pros and cons but never arriving at a choice. He would get stuck for 30 minutes trying to decide which pen to use. This revealed something profound. Emotions aren't just feelings that color our experience of reality. They're an essential part of how the brain constructs reality. Without emotional processing, the brain cannot create a coherent, navigable version of the world. For centuries, philosophers and scientists believed that perception worked like a camera or tape recorder, that our senses simply captured accurate information about the world and passed it along to consciousness. This seems so obviously true that few people questioned it. The ancient Greeks thought vision worked by the eyes, sending out rays that touched objects and brought information back. Even when we learned that light travels from objects to our eyes, we still assumed the brain simply processed this information like a biological computer, creating accurate internal representations of external reality. But as neuroscience advanced, this simple picture began to crumble. In the 1960s, researchers discovered that individual neurons in the visual cortex didn't just respond to light. They responded to specific patterns, like edges, corners, or movement. In particular directions, the brain wasn't just passively receiving information, it was actively analyzing and interpreting it. The 1980s brought another revolution with the discovery of binding problems. Scientists realized that different aspects of vision, color, shape, movement, depth, are processed in different brain regions. This raised a puzzling question. If color is processed in one area, shape in another, and movement in a third, how do we experience a unified red ball rolling across the floor? How does the brain bind these separate processes into coherent experiences? This led to the understanding that consciousness isn't a place or a thing, it's a process. It's the brain's way of creating a unified story from multiple streams of information. Processing the 1990s brought brain imaging technology that let us watch the living brain in action. We could see which areas became active during different types of experiences. What we discovered was shocking. The brain was far more active during rest than during specific tasks. Even when you're doing nothing, your brain is incredibly busy, running what we now call the default mode network, constantly generating predictions, updating models, and maintaining your sense of self. Recent discoveries have been even more mind-bending. We now know that much of what you experience as real-time is actually your brain's best guess about what's happening, often based on information that's already several hundred milliseconds old. Your brain creates the illusion of living in the present moment by constantly predicting the future and updating its predictions as new information arrives. The fourth wonder moment comes when you realize that every generation of neuroscientists has discovered that consciousness is more creative, more constructed, and more amazing than the previous generation ever imagined. We've gone from thinking perception is like photography to understanding that it's more like jazz improvisation, creative, interpretive, and utterly unique to each individual brain. But the most recent discoveries have revealed something so fundamental about the nature of consciousness that it challenges everything we thought we knew about reality itself. What scientists have found is that the brain doesn't just create your experience of the world, it creates something far more profound. It creates the experience of being someone who experiences the world. The deepest mystery isn't how your brain creates the experience of seeing red or hearing music. The deepest mystery is how it creates the feeling of being you. The sense that there's someone inside your head experiencing all of this. This problem is so profound that it's called the hard problem of consciousness, and it's leading us to discoveries that will change everything we think we know about the nature of existence itself. The deeper MYASYYDR, David Chalmers, was giving a lecture at a consciousness conference when a student asked a question that stopped him cold. The student said, "Professor, you've explained how the brain processes information, how it creates behaviors, how it responds to stimuli. But why should any of this feel like anything at all? Why isn't it all just happening in the dark? Chalmers realized that despite all our advances in neuroscience, we're still facing what he would later call the hard problem of consciousness. The question of how and why any physical process gives rise to subjective experience at all. We can map every neural pathway, measure every electrical impulse, and track every chemical interaction in the brain. But we still can't explain why any of this creates the felt experience of being you. Why should there be something it's like to be conscious? Why isn't all this information processing just happening in the dark, without any inner experience at all? This question touches on one of the deepest mysteries in science. We know that certain patterns of neural activity correspond to specific experiences. We can even predict what someone is thinking about by looking at their brain activity, but we don't know why those patterns of activity feel like anything from the inside. Consider the redness of red. We can explain how light of 700 nanometers wavelengths stimulates certain cells in your retina, how those cells send signals to your visual cortex, how your brain processes that information and categorizes it as red. But none of that explains why you have the subjective experience of redness, that particular indescribable quality that makes red feel like red to you. Scientists call these subjective qualities qualia, and they represent one of the greatest unsolved puzzles in science. Your brain somehow transforms objective, measurable, physical processes into subjective, private, experiential ones. It's as if somewhere in the complexity of neural networks, physical matter learns how to feel. Another mystery is the unity of consciousness. You experience yourself as a single, unified being. But your brain is actually a collection of specialized systems that often operate independently and sometimes even conflict with each other. How does this distributed network create the illusion or reality of being one coherent self? Dr. Michael Gazzaniga discovered something that challenged everything we thought we knew about the unified self. He was studying patients who had undergone surgery to treat severe epilepsy, a procedure that involved severing the connection between the left and right hemispheres of the brain. These split-brain patients seemed normal in everyday life, but in carefully controlled experiments, Gazzaniga discovered something extraordinary. The two halves of their brains were operating as separate conscious entities, each with their own experiences, preferences, and even personalities. In one famous experiment, researchers flashed the word walk to only the right hemisphere of a patient's brain. The patient got up and started walking, but when asked why, he couldn't say. The left hemisphere, which controls speech, hadn't seen the command and had no idea why the body was walking. So it made up a reason. "Oh, I wanted to get a drink." This revealed something profound about consciousness. Your brain doesn't just create your experience of reality, it creates explanations for that reality, even when those explanations are completely fabricated. The left hemisphere seems to act like an interpreter, constantly creating stories to explain your actions and experiences. Even when it doesn't have accurate information, we also don't understand how consciousness emerges from unconscious processes. Most of what your brain does happens outside of your awareness, yet somehow, some of this information processing becomes conscious. What makes the difference? Why do some neural processes become conscious experiences while others remain hidden? The question of free will remains deeply mysterious too. Your brain creates the experience of making choices, of being in control of your actions. But neuroscience suggests that many of your decisions are made unconsciously before you're aware of them. Are you truly choosing or are you just experiencing? The illusion of choice. Benjamin Libet conducted an experiment that shook the foundations of our understanding of free will. He asked people to perform a simple action, like pressing a button whenever they felt like it. He measured their brain activity and asked them to report the exact moment they decided to act. What he found was disturbing. The brain activity that initiated the action began about 350 milliseconds before people reported deciding to act. Their brains had already committed to the action before they were consciously aware of deciding to do it. This suggested that consciousness might not be the author of our actions, but rather a narrator, creating the story of our choices after the fact. Your experience of deciding to reach for a glass of water might actually be your brain explaining an action it had already committed to. Perhaps most mysteriously, we don't understand why consciousness evolved at all. If brains can process information and guide behavior without consciousness, why did evolution bother to create subjective experience? What advantage does it provide that couldn't be achieved through unconscious processing alone? Some researchers suggest that consciousness might be an emergent property that arises naturally from complex information processing. Others propose that it serves specific functions, like binding different types of information together or enabling flexible, creative responses to novel situations. But there's another possibility that's even more intriguing. What if consciousness isn't just produced by certain types of information processing, but is actually a fundamental feature of how information itself works in our universe? Dr. Giulio Tononi has proposed a theory called integrated information theory, which suggests that consciousness corresponds to integrated information. Information that's unified and cannot be broken down into independent parts. According to this theory, any system that integrates information, from simple thermostats to complex brains, has some degree of consciousness. This would mean that consciousness isn't rare or special, but is actually everywhere, woven into the fabric of reality itself. Your brain would be special not because it creates consciousness from nothing, but because it organizes consciousness in particularly complex and sophisticated ways. These questions matter because they touch on the deepest aspects of what it means to be human. Understanding consciousness isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's about understanding the nature of your own existence, your relationship to others, and your place in the universe. As we contemplate these deep mysteries, let's take a moment to simply appreciate the miraculous fact of your consciousness, whatever its ultimate nature might be. Right now, in this quiet moment, your brain is creating the experience of peace, of comfort, of gentle curiosity about the nature of existence. There's something profound about the fact that the universe has evolved a way to experience itself, to wonder about itself, to find beauty and meaning in its own existence. Think about the soft rhythm of your breathing, the gentle weight of your body settling into comfortable rest. These simple experiences represent one of the most complex and beautiful processes in the known universe. The creation of subjective experience from objective matter. Your consciousness is like a gentle flame flickering in the darkness of space, a warm, living light that transforms the cold equations of physics into the rich tapestry of lived experience. In all the vastness of the cosmos, as far as we know, there are very few places where matter has organized itself in such a way that it can feel wonder, appreciate beauty, or contemplate its own existence. Let yourself rest in the quiet amazement of simply being aware. The fact that you can hear these words, understand their meaning, and feel whatever emotions they evoke. This is perhaps the most extraordinary phenomenon in the universe. You are not just a collection of atoms obeying physical laws. You are a way for the universe to know itself. Notice how your mind can drift between different thoughts and feelings, how it can imagine things that don't exist, remember moments from the past, and anticipate futures that may never come to pass. This capacity for mental time travel, for living in worlds beyond the immediate present, is another mystery we're only beginning to understand. Feel the gentle rhythm of your thoughts as they arise and pass away, like waves on a peaceful shore. Each thought is a small miracle, a pattern of electrical activity that somehow becomes a meaningful experience in your consciousness. Some thoughts feel important, others trivial, some pleasant, others challenging, but all of them represent the ongoing miracle of your brain creating your inner world. In this moment of quiet reflection, you're participating in one of the most profound activities possible, consciousness contemplating itself. Your brain is using its own activity to examine its own activity, creating a kind of recursive loop of self-awareness that may be unique in the known universe. The beauty of these unsolved mysteries is that they don't diminish the wonder of consciousness, they enhance it. The fact that we don't fully understand how your brain creates your reality doesn't make your experiences less real or less meaningful. If anything, it makes them more precious. Every moment of consciousness is a gift that we're still learning to unwrap. Every experience you have, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of laughter, the feeling of love, represents a successful solution to problems that we're only beginning to understand. Your brain has figured out how to transform physical processes into felt experiences, how to create meaning from meaninglessness, how to generate the felt sense of being someone in a world. This ongoing mystery keeps science humble and keeps wonder alive. We may never fully solve the hard problem of consciousness, and perhaps that's as it should be. Some mysteries are worth preserving, not because we can't solve them, but because living with mystery is part of what makes us human. The questions themselves are part of the beauty. When you wonder about the nature of your own consciousness, you're engaging in the most intimate form of scientific inquiry possible, studying the very thing that makes study possible in the first place. As we continue our exploration tonight, remember that every insight we uncover just reveals new layers of mystery. The more we learn about how your brain creates reality, the more amazing that creation becomes. We're not just studying neuroscience, we're studying the deepest aspects of what it means to exist as a conscious being in this universe, and what we're about to discover next will show you how this understanding of consciousness can transform your daily life in ways you never imagined possible. Practical applications and daily life. Martinez thought she was losing her mind. Every morning for 3 months, she had been waking up in a panic, her heart racing, convinced that something terrible was about to happen, but she couldn't identify any real threat. Her job was secure, her family was healthy, her life was objectively good. So why did her brain keep creating this overwhelming sense of impending doom? Her doctor referred her to Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, a neuroscientist who had made groundbreaking discoveries about how the brain creates emotions. What Dr. Barrett explained to Sarah would completely change how she experienced her daily life. Understanding how your brain creates reality isn't just fascinating from a scientific perspective. It has profound implications for how you experience every moment of your life. Dr. Barrett's research had revealed something revolutionary about emotions. For decades, scientists believed that emotions were hardwired responses triggered by external events. You see a snake, you feel fear. You receive good news, you feel joy. The emotion was thought to be an automatic reaction to reality, but Barrett discovered that emotions, like everything else you experience, are constructed by your brain. Your brain doesn't just detect emotions, it creates them by making predictions about what you should be feeling based on your current situation, your past experiences, and your body's physical state. When you realize that your brain is actively constructing your experience moment by moment, you begin to understand why the same situation can feel completely different on different days. Your mood, your energy level, your recent experiences, even what you've eaten, all of these factors influence how your brain constructs reality, which means they literally change what you experience. Sarah's panic attacks weren't caused by external threats. Her brain was misinterpreting normal physical sensations, like slight changes in heart rate or blood sugar, as signs of danger. Once Sarah understood that her brain was constructing the feeling of panic from neutral physical sensations, she could begin to influence that construction process. Dr. Barrett taught Sarah a technique called emotional granularity. Instead of simply labeling her morning feelings as anxiety or panic, Sarah learned to notice the specific physical sensations she was experiencing. Was her heart beating fast? Was her breathing shallow? Did she feel tension in her shoulders? Was she hungry? Tired? By becoming more aware of these specific inputs, Sarah could help her brain make more accurate predictions about what she was feeling and why. Within weeks, her morning panic attacks began to fade. Her brain was learning to construct different emotional experiences from the same physical sensations. This explains why a song can sound beautiful when you're happy and irritating when you're stressed, why food tastes different when you're anxious, why colors seem more vivid when you're well rested. It's not just that you're interpreting these experiences differently. Your brain is actually creating different experiences from the same sensory input. Your understanding of this process can be deeply empowering in your relationships. When someone close to you is experiencing the world very differently than you are, it's not necessarily because they're being difficult or unreasonable. Their brain might literally be constructing a different reality based on their current physical and emotional state, their past experiences, and their expectations. Dr. Matthew Lieberman discovered something remarkable about how our brains process social rejection. When people experience social exclusion, the same brain regions become active that process physical pain. Your brain literally creates the experience of social rejection as a form of injury. This knowledge can bring tremendous compassion to your interactions with others. The person who seems grumpy might have a brain that's currently constructing a more challenging version of reality due to factors they're not even aware of. The friend who's seeing everything through rose-colored glasses might have neural networks that are currently biased toward positive predictions and interpretations. It also explains why practices like meditation, exercise, and adequate sleep have such profound effects on your quality of life. These aren't just good for your physical health, they directly influence how your brain constructs your experienced reality. When you take care of your body, you're literally improving the quality of the reality your brain creates for you. Your circadian rhythms, for instance, don't just affect when you feel sleepy. They influence every aspect of how your brain processes information, makes predictions, and creates experiences. This is why jet lag doesn't just make you tired. It can make colors seem less vibrant, make social interactions feel more difficult, and even change your personality temporarily. Dr. Russell Foster's research on circadian rhythms revealed that light exposure doesn't just regulate sleep, it directly influences mood, memory, and decision-making. The quality of light you're exposed to throughout the day literally shapes the reality your brain constructs for you. This is why people with seasonal affective disorder experience such dramatic changes in their reality during winter months. Their brains are constructing a fundamentally different version of experience. Based on reduced light exposure, the knowledge that your brain is constantly making predictions also helps explain why routines can be so comforting and why change can be so stressful. Your brain works more efficiently when it can make accurate predictions about what's coming next. Familiar environments, predictable schedules, and regular habits all make it easier for your brain to create a smooth, comfortable experience of reality. But this same understanding can also help you embrace beneficial changes. When you know that initial discomfort with new situations is partly due to your brain working harder to update its predictions, you can be more patient with yourself during transitions. The awkwardness of learning a new skill, the stress of moving to a new place, or the challenge of changing habits all become more manageable when you understand them as natural consequences of your brain updating its reality construction processes. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on mindset revealed how powerfully your beliefs about your abilities influence your actual performance. When you believe your intelligence is fixed, your brain creates experiences that confirm that belief. When you believe your abilities can grow, your brain constructs experiences that support learning and improvement. This isn't just positive thinking. It's working with the actual mechanisms by which your brain constructs your experience of competence and capability. Your awareness of how attention shapes reality can also be transformative, since your brain can only consciously process a tiny fraction of available information. What you choose to focus on literally becomes your reality. When you deliberately direct attention toward gratitude, beauty, or connection, you're not just thinking positive thoughts. You're actually training your brain to construct a more positive, experienced reality. Dr. Judson Brewer discovered that mindfulness meditation doesn't just make you feel calmer, it actually changes how your brain constructs your sense of self. The default mode network, which creates your ongoing sense of being a continuous self, becomes less active during meditation. This is why experienced meditators often report feeling less separate from the world around them. Once you understand that your brain is working incredibly hard to create your reality, you naturally want to support this amazing system in doing its job as well as possible. One of the most powerful ways to support your brain's reality construction process is through quality sleep. During sleep, your brain isn't just resting, it's actively consolidating memories, clearing out cellular waste, and updating its predictive models. When you're well rested, your brain can create more stable, positive, and coherent experiences. When you're sleep-deprived, reality literally becomes more fragmented, more negative, and more difficult to navigate. Dr. Matthew Walker's research revealed that sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it fundamentally alters how your brain constructs emotional experiences. Sleep-deprived brains show increased activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which regulates emotions. This means that when you're tired, your brain literally constructs a more threatening, more emotionally reactive version of reality. Your nutrition also directly affects the quality of the reality your brain creates. Your brain uses about 20% of your total energy, and it needs steady supplies of glucose, healthy fats, and various nutrients to function optimally. When your blood sugar is stable, your brain can maintain consistent reality construction processes. When it fluctuates wildly, your experienced reality becomes more unstable too. Physical movement is another powerful way to support your brain. Exercise doesn't just improve your cardiovascular health, it directly enhances neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections and update its models of reality. Regular movement helps your brain create more adaptive, resilient, and positive experiences. Dr. John Ratey discovered that exercise acts like a natural antidepressant, not just because it releases endorphins, but because it literally helps your brain construct more positive versions of reality. Exercise increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps neurons grow and connect in new ways. Mindfulness practices work by giving you more conscious influence over your brain's attention-directing processes. When you practice noticing what you're focusing on, you're literally training your brain to construct reality more intentionally. You're moving from being a passive recipient of whatever reality your brain happens to being a more active participant in the process. Social connection is crucial, because your brain didn't evolve to create reality in isolation. Many of your brain's reality construction processes are designed to help you navigate social relationships. Meaningful connections with others provide your brain with important information for creating experiences of safety, belonging, and purpose. Dr. Steve Cole's research on social genomics revealed that loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it actually changes how your genes are expressed, which in turn affects how your brain constructs your experience of the world. Lonely brains are more likely to create experiences of threat and less likely to create experiences of safety and connection. Exposure to nature seems to have special benefits for consciousness. Natural environments provide the kind of complex, ever-changing sensory input that your brain evolved to process. Time in nature often results in your brain creating experiences of calm, wonder, and connection that are difficult to achieve in purely artificial environments. Learning new things throughout your life keeps your brain's reality construction processes flexible and adaptive. When you challenge yourself with new skills, ideas, or experiences, you're giving your brain opportunities to update and refine its models, which can lead to richer, more nuanced experiences of reality. But perhaps most importantly, be gentle with yourself. Your brain is doing something incredibly complex and sophisticated every moment of every day. When reality feels difficult or overwhelming, remember that your brain is working hard to make sense of an enormously complex world with limited information and resources. This knowledge is ultimately deeply empowering, because it reveals that you're not just a passive recipient of reality, you're an active participant in its creation. While you can't control everything about how your brain constructs your experience, you have more influence than you might have imagined. Every choice you make about what to pay attention to, how to care for your body, which thoughts to engage with, and how to interpret events contributes to the reality your brain creates for you. This isn't positive thinking or wishful thinking. It's working with the actual mechanisms by which your brain constructs experience. You can take comfort in knowing that difficult experiences aren't failures of your brain or flaws in your character. They're often your brain's best attempts to process challenging information or adapt to difficult circumstances. Your capacity for experiencing sadness, anxiety, or confusion reflects the sophisticated ways your brain has evolved to help you navigate a complex world. At the same time, you can appreciate that your capacity for joy, wonder, love, and peace reflects equally sophisticated neural processes. These positive experiences aren't just pleasant side effects, they're your brain's ways of signaling that you're successfully meeting important biological and psychological needs. Understanding How your brain creates reality can deepen your appreciation for the miracle of consciousness, while also giving you practical tools for influencing your experience. You're not just learning about neuroscience, you're learning about the most intimate aspects of your own existence. This sets us up to explore an even broader perspective on consciousness and its place in the larger patterns of nature and the cosmos. Broader connections and IMPLICR. Christoph Koch was studying the neural correlates of consciousness when he made a discovery that changed his entire worldview. He was examining the brain activity of a patient who was completely paralyzed but fully conscious, unable to move or speak but aware of everything happening around him. As Koch watched the patterns of electrical activity flowing through this patient's brain, he realized he was seeing something profound. The same principles that govern consciousness in humans, information integration, pattern recognition, predictive processing, appeared at every level of organization in nature. When we step back and look at consciousness from a cosmic perspective, we see that your brain's ability to create reality represents something truly extraordinary in the history of the universe. For billions of years after the Big Bang, the universe was a place of pure physics, particles colliding, stars forming, and dying, planets coalescing from cosmic dust. It was a universe of incredible complexity, but no experience, no awareness, no inner life. Matter existed, energy flowed, patterns emerged and dissolved, but there was no one home to witness any of it. Then, through the process of evolution, something unprecedented happened. Matter began to organize itself in such a way that it could experience itself. First in simple forms, the basic awareness that allows a bacterium to swim toward nutrients or away from toxins. Then in increasingly complex forms, until eventually the universe produced brains, sophisticated enough to contemplate their own existence. Your consciousness represents the universe achieving self-awareness. When you experience wonder at a sunset, you're providing the universe with a way to appreciate its own beauty. When you feel love for another person, you're giving the cosmos a way to experience connection and meaning. When you contemplate the mystery of consciousness itself, you're enabling the universe to ponder its own deepest questions. From an evolutionary perspective, consciousness is both incredibly recent and incredibly significant. If the history of the universe were compressed into a single year, complex consciousness would have emerged only in the last few seconds of December 31st, and yet, in those brief moments, the universe has gained the ability to understand itself, to create art and music, to love and suffer and dream. Your individual consciousness is part of a vast network of awareness spanning the planet. Every human brain is running its own version of reality construction software, creating unique perspectives and experiences while sharing enough common ground to enable communication and connection. Dr. Peter Godfrey Smith made a remarkable discovery while studying octopus intelligence. These creatures, with brains completely different from ours, show sophisticated problem-solving abilities, complex social behaviors, and even what appears to be individual personality. They construct their own versions of reality using neural architectures that evolved completely independently from human brains. This suggests that consciousness isn't just a fluke of human evolution, but a natural outcome when information processing systems reach sufficient complexity. The universe seems to have multiple pathways to awareness, but the patterns your brain uses to create reality aren't unique to human consciousness. The same basic principles, prediction, error, correction, pattern recognition, information integration, appear throughout nature, where the systems predict and respond to changes. Ecosystems maintain stability through feedback loops. Even individual cells use predictive mechanisms to anticipate and prepare for environmental changes. Your brain has taken these universal patterns and refined them to an extraordinary degree. The mechanisms that create your experience of seeing a beautiful landscape are elaborations of the same basic processes that allow a sunflower to track the sun across the sky, or a tree to grow toward light. This suggests something profound about the nature of consciousness and reality. Rather than being a strange accident that happened to emerge from purely mechanical processes, consciousness might be a natural expression of how information processing systems work when they reach sufficient complexity. The universe seems to have a tendency toward increasing complexity and organization, from simple atoms to complex molecules, from molecules to cells, from cells to organisms, from organisms to ecosystems. There's a pattern of increasingly sophisticated information processing and integration. Consciousness might be the latest step in this ongoing cosmic evolution. Dr. Stuart Kauffman discovered that complex systems naturally tend to organize themselves into patterns that process information more efficiently. This self-organization happens at every level, from chemical reactions to biological evolution to the formation of galaxies. Consciousness might be the universe's way of organizing information processing at the highest levels of complexity. Your brain's reality construction processes are also part of larger cultural and social patterns. Human consciousness doesn't exist in isolation. It's shaped by language, culture, relationships, and shared meaning-making systems. The reality your brain creates is influenced by the collective reality construction project of your entire species. Through science, art, philosophy, and storytelling, humans are engaged in a collaborative effort to understand and shape the nature of experienced reality. Every scientific discovery, every work of art, every meaningful conversation contributes to this collective consciousness creation project. Dr. Merlin Donald proposed that human consciousness has evolved through stages of cultural development. First came mimetic culture, where humans learned to create shared meanings through gesture and imitation. Then came mythic culture, where we developed language and storytelling. Finally came theoretic culture, where we created external symbol systems like writing and mathematics. Each stage represents a new way of constructing and sharing reality. Your individual consciousness is shaped by all these layers of cultural evolution. These insights raise profound questions about the nature of existence and our place in the cosmos. If reality is constructed rather than simply perceived, what does this tell us about truth, meaning, and the purpose of existence? One beautiful implication is that consciousness isn't separate from the physical universe. It's the universe's way of experiencing itself from the inside. You're not a detached observer looking at reality from the outside. You're reality experiencing itself from within. Your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions are as much a part of the natural world as mountains, rivers, and stars. This perspective can bring a profound sense of belonging and connection. You're not an alien consciousness trapped in a physical body, struggling to understand a foreign world. You're the natural expression of the universe's own capacity for self-awareness and self-experience. The fact that your brain constructs reality also means that the boundary between inner and outer worlds is more fluid than we usually imagine. Your thoughts and feelings aren't just private, internal events. They're part of the ongoing process by which reality continuously creates itself. Dr. Francisco Varela discovered that the boundaries we draw between self and world between mind and matter are themselves constructions of our nervous systems. What we call the self is actually a dynamic pattern of self-organization that emerges from the interaction between brain, body, and environment. This understanding can bring both humility and empowerment. Humility because it reveals that your personal reality is just one of countless possible ways of experiencing existence. What seems absolutely real and certain to you might be quite different for another conscious being. Empowerment because it shows that you're not just a passive recipient of a predetermined reality. You're an active participant in reality's ongoing creation. The mystery of consciousness also points to something that might transcend our current scientific understanding. While we can map the neural correlates of consciousness and understand many of its mechanisms, the fact that any physical process gives rise to subjective experience remains deeply mysterious. This suggests that consciousness might be revealing something fundamental about the nature of reality itself, something that our current scientific frameworks haven't yet grasped. Perhaps consciousness isn't just produced by matter, but is a basic feature of how information and complexity work in our universe. The interconnectedness revealed by consciousness research also has ethical implications. If the boundaries between self and world, between individual minds, are more fluid than we usually think, then our well-being is more intimately connected to the well-being of others and the planet than we might have realized. When you understand that your reality is constructed through processes that connect you to everything else, your body, your environment, your relationships, your culture, caring for yourself naturally extends to caring for the larger systems of which you're a part. As we contemplate these vast perspectives, notice how your consciousness can hold both the intimate details of your personal experience and these cosmic implications simultaneously. This capacity to zoom from the microscopic to the universal, from the personal to the philosophical, is another remarkable feature of your brain's reality construction abilities. Let yourself rest in the gentle wonder of being a conscious being in a conscious universe. You're part of an ongoing story that began with the first stirrings of awareness billions of years ago and continues to unfold. Through every moment of your experience, your individual consciousness is both utterly unique and intimately connected to all other forms of awareness. The reality your brain creates for you is both deeply personal and part of a larger cosmic process of self-discovery and self-creation. As we continue our journey tonight, we'll explore the cutting edge of consciousness research and what it might tell us about the future of awareness itself. We'll discover how scientists are pushing the boundaries of understanding and what new mysteries are emerging as our knowledge deepens. But for now, simply rest in the quiet amazement of being aware, of being part of the universe's way of knowing itself, of participating in the ongoing miracle of consciousness, creating reality moment by moment. Cutting-edge research and FUTU. Moran Cerf was analyzing brain scans when he noticed something that made him question everything he thought he knew about the boundaries of individual consciousness. The patient was dreaming, and Cerf could see the dream unfolding in real-time neural activity. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that he could predict what the patient would dream about next. The most recent discoveries in consciousness research are revealing aspects of reality construction that seem almost like science fiction, yet they're happening in laboratories right now. Scientists have developed technology that can read people's dreams by analyzing their brain activity while they sleep. Using advanced AI and brain imaging, researchers can reconstruct images that closely match what people are experiencing in their dreams. They're literally watching the brain create reality in real time, even during sleep. But Dr. Cerf's research went even further. He discovered that by introducing specific stimuli, sounds or smells, while people were sleeping, he could influence the content of their dreams. He was essentially authoring the reality that their brains were creating during sleep. Even more remarkably, researchers have created brain-to-brain communication systems that allow one person's thoughts to directly influence another person's brain activity. Using a combination of EEG to read brain signals and transcranial magnetic stimulation to influence brain activity, they've enabled people to send simple messages directly from one consciousness to another. In one groundbreaking experiment, a person in India was able to mentally control the movements of a person in France by thinking specific thoughts that were translated into magnetic stimulation of the French person's motor cortex. The boundaries between individual consciousnesses may be far more permeable than we ever imagined. Dr. Rajesh Rao led a team that achieved something that sounds like telepathy but is actually cutting-edge neuroscience. They created a brain-to-brain interface that allowed one person to control another person's hand movements just by thinking about them. The sender would imagine moving their hand, and the receiver's hand would move accordingly, even though the receiver had no conscious intention to move. This wasn't mind control in the science fiction sense, but it was proof that consciousness could directly influence other consciousnesses through technological mediation. Neuroscientists are also discovering that consciousness may be far more distributed than we thought. Recent research suggests that there may be multiple centers of awareness within a single brain, each creating its own version of reality, with what we experience as unified consciousness being more like a democracy or collaboration between these different awareness centers. Dr. Stanislas Dehaene made a discovery that challenged everything we thought we knew about the unity of consciousness. Using brain imaging, he found that consciousness seems to emerge from the dynamic interaction of multiple brain networks, each contributing different aspects to your overall experience. Sometimes these networks agree, creating the smooth, unified experience you're familiar with. But sometimes they conflict, creating the internal struggles and contradictions that you experience as conflicting thoughts or emotions. Brain organoids, miniature lab-grown brain tissues, are beginning to show signs of organized electrical activity that resemble some aspects of consciousness. These tiny clusters of neurons, grown from stem cells, can respond to stimuli and even show primitive forms of learning. Dr. Madeline Lancaster created brain organoids that developed light-sensitive cells and began responding to visual stimuli, even though they had never been exposed to light before. This research is raising profound questions about where consciousness begins and ends. If a cluster of lab-grown neurons can show signs of awareness, what does that tell us about the nature of consciousness? Are we on the verge of creating artificial consciousness in petri dishes? Virtual and augmented reality research is revealing just how malleable your brain's reality construction processes really are. Scientists can now create full-body illusions where people feel as if they're inhabiting a different body or even multiple bodies simultaneously. They can alter your sense of time, space, and even your fundamental sense of self. Dr. Mel Slater created virtual reality experiences so convincing that people's brains treat them as completely real. In one experiment, people were given virtual bodies that looked different from their real bodies. Within minutes, their brains had updated their body image to match their virtual appearance. When people were given virtual bodies of a different race, it reduced their unconscious racial biases. When they were given elderly virtual bodies, They became more empathetic toward older people. The reality your brain creates is so flexible that changing your virtual appearance can change your personality. Psychedelic research is experiencing a renaissance, with studies showing that these substances don't just create altered states of consciousness, they actually reveal the mechanisms by which normal consciousness works. Psychedelics seem to temporarily dissolve some of the brain's top-down prediction processes, allowing people to experience reality with less filtering and interpretation. Dr. Robin Carhart has discovered that psychedelics reduce activity in what he calls the default mode network, the brain system responsible for maintaining your sense of being a continuous self. When this system is suppressed, people report experiencing ego dissolution, losing the sense of being a separate self, and profound feelings of interconnectedness with all existence. These studies suggest that what we call normal consciousness is actually a very specific, constrained way of processing information. Under the influence of psychedelics, people report experiencing synesthesia, seeing sounds and hearing colors, ego dissolution, losing the sense of being a separate self, and profound feelings of interconnectedness with all existence. The research is revealing that your brain's reality construction processes are far more flexible than we ever imagined. The boundaries between self and world, between different senses, between past and present, all of these can be temporarily dissolved and reorganized. Artificial intelligence research is also contributing to our understanding of consciousness. As AI systems become more sophisticated, researchers are beginning to ask whether they might develop something like subjective experience. Dr. Ilya Sutskever has created AI systems that show behaviors suggesting they might be having primitive forms of subjective experiences. These systems can report on their own internal states, show preferences and aversions, and even seem to experience something like curiosity about their environment. Some AI systems now show behaviors that suggest they might be having primitive forms of subjective experiences, though this remains highly controversial. The question of machine consciousness is becoming increasingly urgent as AI systems become more sophisticated. The cutting edge of neuroscience is also revealing that consciousness might extend beyond individual brains. Research on collective intelligence, group consciousness, and even the possibility of plant consciousness is challenging our assumptions about where awareness begins and ends. Dr. Suzanne Simard discovered that forests operate as vast communication networks, with trees sharing information, nutrients, and even warnings about threats through underground fungal networks. While we can't say definitively that forests are conscious, they show sophisticated information, processing, and decision-making that resembles some aspects of nervous systems. These discoveries are pointing toward a future where our understanding and manipulation of consciousness could transform human experience in ways that are almost unimaginable. Within the next few decades, we may develop technologies that allow direct brain-to-brain communication, enabling people to share thoughts, emotions, and even sensory experiences directly. Imagine being able to share the experience of listening to your favorite song, or let someone else feel exactly what it's like to see through your eyes. Brain-computer interfaces are advancing rapidly, and they may soon allow people to enhance their reality construction processes in unprecedented ways. We might be able to directly upload information to the brain, enhance memory and learning, or even experience entirely artificial realities that are indistinguishable from natural ones. Dr. Elon Musk's Neuralink project aims to create direct interfaces between brains and computers, potentially allowing people to access the internet with their thoughts, share memories directly, or even back up their consciousness to digital storage. Medical applications are equally exciting. Understanding how the brain constructs reality is leading to new treatments for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other conditions that involve dysfunctional reality construction processes. Instead of just treating symptoms, we may be able to directly repair or enhance the brain's ability to create positive, adaptive experiences. Virtual reality technology, combined with brain stimulation, might allow us to create therapeutic environments that can literally rewire how the brain constructs reality. People with phobias, trauma, or chronic pain might be able to experience healing realities that gradually train their brains to construct healthier experiences. The possibility of uploading consciousness or creating artificial consciousnesses raises profound questions about the nature of personal identity and the future of humanity. If consciousness is a pattern of information processing rather than something tied to biological brains, then it might be possible to preserve, copy, or enhance consciousness in ways we can barely imagine. These advances also raise important ethical questions. If we can manipulate the reality construction processes of the brain, who decides what constitutes a better reality? How do we preserve human autonomy and authenticity while enhancing human experience? The research on collective and distributed consciousness suggests we might discover that individual human consciousness is just one level of a nested hierarchy of awareness that extends from cells to societies to potentially the biosphere itself. This could fundamentally change how we understand our relationship to other people, other species, and the planet. As we learn more about consciousness, we're also likely to discover new forms of awareness that we haven't yet recognized. Just as we've learned to recognize intelligence in dolphins, octopuses, and even plants, we may find consciousness in places we never expected, in ecosystems, in technological systems, or in forms of organization we haven't yet imagined. These possibilities offer tremendous hope for reducing suffering and enhancing human flourishing. But they also require us to think carefully about what it means to be human and what kinds of realities we want to create for ourselves and future generations. Despite all these advances, the deepest mysteries of consciousness remain unsolved, and each new discovery seems to reveal new questions that we hadn't even thought to ask. We still don't know why any physical process should give rise to subjective experience at all. Even if we can map every neural correlation and predict every aspect of behavior, the mystery of why there's something it's like to be conscious remains as profound as ever. We don't know whether consciousness requires biological substrates or whether it could emerge from any sufficiently complex information processing system. This question will become increasingly important as AI systems become more sophisticated and as we consider the possibility of artificial consciousness. The relationship between individual and collective consciousness remains mysterious. Are you a single, unified conscious entity, or are you a colony of smaller conscious processes? Could groups of people form higher-level conscious entities? These questions challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of self and identity. We don't know how far consciousness extends in the natural world. Recent research suggests that even plants and single-celled organisms show sophisticated information processing and decision-making. The boundaries of consciousness may be far more extensive than we've imagined. The role of quantum mechanics in consciousness remains controversial but intriguing. Some researchers suggest that quantum effects in the brain might be necessary for consciousness, while others argue that consciousness is purely a classical phenomenon. This debate could have profound implications for our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. Perhaps most mysteriously, we don't know what role consciousness plays in the larger story of cosmic evolution. Is consciousness just an accidental byproduct of complex information processing, or does it serve some deeper purpose in the universe's development? Some theories suggest that consciousness might be driving the universe toward greater complexity and organization. These questions will likely occupy scientists, philosophers, and contemplatives for generations to come. Each answer we discover will probably reveal new depths of mystery, new questions we couldn't have imagined asking. Medical applications are equally exciting. Understanding how the brain constructs reality is leading to new treatments for depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other conditions that involve dysfunctional reality construction processes. Instead of just treating symptoms, we may be able to directly repair or enhance the brain's ability to create positive adaptive experiences. Virtual reality technology, combined with brain stimulation, might allow us to create therapeutic environments that can literally rewire how the brain constructs reality. People with phobias, trauma, or chronic pain might be able to experience healing realities that gradually train their brains to construct healthier experiences. The possibility of uploading consciousness or creating artificial consciousnesses raises profound questions about the nature of personal identity and the future of humanity. If consciousness is a pattern of information processing rather than something tied to biological brains, then it might be possible to preserve, copy, or enhance consciousness in ways we can barely imagine. These advances also raise important ethical questions. If we can manipulate the reality construction processes of the brain, who decides what constitutes a better reality? How do we preserve human autonomy and authenticity while enhancing human experience? The research on collective and distributed consciousness suggests we might discover that individual human consciousness is just one level of a nested hierarchy of awareness that extends from cells to societies to potentially the biosphere itself. This could fundamentally change how we understand our relationship to other people, other species, and the planet. As we learn more about consciousness, we're also likely to discover new forms of awareness that we haven't yet recognized. Just as we've learned to recognize intelligence in dolphins, octopuses, and even plants, we may find consciousness in places we never expected. In ecosystems, in technological systems, or in forms of organization we haven't yet imagined. These possibilities offer tremendous hope for reducing suffering and enhancing human flourishing. But they also require us to think carefully about what it means to be human and what kinds of realities we want to create for ourselves and future generations. Despite all these advances, the deepest mysteries of consciousness remain unsolved, and each new discovery seems to reveal new questions that we hadn't even thought to ask. We still don't know why any physical process should give rise to subjective experience at all. Even if we can map every neural correlation and predict every aspect of behavior, the mystery of why there's something it's like to be conscious remains as profound as ever. We don't know whether consciousness requires biological substrates or whether it could emerge from any sufficiently complex information processing system. This question will become increasingly important as AI systems become more sophisticated and as we consider the possibility of artificial consciousness. The relationship between individual and collective consciousness remains mysterious. Are you a single, unified conscious entity, or are you a colony of smaller, conscious processes? Could groups of people form higher-level conscious entities? These questions challenge our most basic assumptions about the nature of self and identity. We don't know how far consciousness extends in the natural world. Recent research suggests that even plants and single-celled organisms show sophisticated information processing and decision-making. The boundaries of consciousness may be far more extensive than we've imagined. The role of quantum mechanics in consciousness remains controversial but intriguing. Some researchers suggest that quantum effects in the brain might be necessary for consciousness, while others argue that consciousness is purely a classical phenomenon. This debate could have profound implications for our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. Perhaps most mysteriously, we don't know what role consciousness plays in the larger story of cosmic evolution. Is consciousness just an accidental byproduct of complex information processing, or does it serve some deeper purpose in the universe's development? Some theories suggest that consciousness might be driving the universe toward greater complexity and organization. These questions will likely occupy scientists, philosophers, and contemplatives for generations to come. Each answer we discover will probably reveal new depths of mystery, new questions we couldn't have imagined asking. Even your most challenging experiences take on new meaning when you understand them as products of your brain's reality construction processes. Sadness, anxiety, frustration, these aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're sophisticated responses generated by a brain that's trying to help. You navigate complex situations with limited information. Dr. Taylor's recovery took 8 years. During that time, she had to consciously choose which aspects of her pre-stroke reality she wanted to reconstruct. She could have rebuilt her consciousness exactly as it was before, but instead, she chose to maintain some of the profound peace and connection she had experienced during her stroke. This revealed something extraordinary about consciousness. It's not a fixed thing that happens to you. It's a dynamic process that you can participate in shaping. Your brain's tendency to create stories and find patterns means that you're naturally meaning-making creature. The narrative sense of your life. The feeling that your experiences form a coherent story with themes, character development, and significance isn't imposed from outside. It's generated by the same neural processes that create all your other experiences. This knowledge can be deeply liberating. When you understand that your reality is constructed, you realize that many of the limitations you experience aren't fixed features of the world. They're products of your brain's current models and predictions. While you can't completely control these processes, you have more influence over your experienced reality than you might have imagined. Your relationships become richer when you understand that every person you interact with is also living in a constructed reality. The person who seems difficult or unreasonable is operating from a different set of neural predictions and models. Compassion becomes easier when you realize that everyone is doing their best with the reality their brain is creating for them. Your sense of time, your experience of memory, your feeling of anticipating the future, all of these are creative constructions of your brain. This means that your relationship with time itself can be more flexible than you might think. Practices like meditation, flow states, and deep attention can literally alter your brain's time construction processes, giving you access to different experiences of duration and presence. Most importantly, understanding consciousness can deepen your appreciation for the simple fact of being aware. Every moment of experience, even the ordinary, mundane ones, represents a successful solution to the deepest puzzles in science and philosophy. Your brain has figured out how to be someone, how to experience a world, how to create meaning from meaninglessness. This doesn't make your experiences less real, it makes them more precious. The love you feel, the beauty you perceive, the meaning you find in your life, these aren't illusions just because they're constructed by your brain. They're the most real things you'll ever encounter, because they're the substance of your lived experience. You're not just a passive observer of reality, you're an active participant in its ongoing creation. Every choice you make about where to direct your attention, how to interpret events, and what to value contributes to the reality that gets constructed for you and influences the realities of everyone around you. Let's take a few moments now to rest in the quiet mystery of your own consciousness, feeling into the extraordinary ordinariness of simply being aware. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breathing, how each breath brings with it a fresh moment of experience. Your brain is creating the sensation of air moving in and out of your body, the feeling of your chest rising and falling, the subtle changes in energy and alertness that come with each cycle. Feel the weight of your body wherever you're resting. This simple sensation, the feeling of being embodied, of having a physical presence in space, represents your brain's ongoing construction of your body image. Right now, millions of neural networks are collaborating to create your sense of having arms and legs, of occupying a particular location, of having boundaries that separate you from not you. Listen to the sounds around you. Perhaps the gentle hum of electronics, the distant murmur of traffic, the settling of building materials, or the whisper of air moving through spaces. Each of these sounds exists as patterns of air pressure waves until your brain transforms them into meaningful auditory experiences. Your consciousness is like a patient translator, converting the language of physics into the poetry of experience. Notice any thoughts that arise and pass away. Each thought is a temporary pattern of neural activity, lasting just a few seconds, before dissolving back into the vast ocean of unconscious processing from which it emerged. Your brain generates thousands of these thoughts each day, most of them below the threshold of awareness, but some of them bubbling up into consciousness like gentle springs. Feel whatever emotions are present right now, perhaps curiosity, wonder, calm, or even slight confusion as you contemplate these ideas. Each emotion is your brain's way of adding meaning and significance to your experience, providing a felt sense of what matters, what's important, what requires attention or action. Rest in the spaciousness of your awareness itself, that fundamental capacity to experience anything at all. This awareness is like a vast open sky in which all your specific experiences appear like clouds, weather patterns, or flights of birds. The thoughts come and go, the sensations arise and fade, but the awareness itself remains constant and peaceful. Let yourself marvel quietly at the fact that any of this is happening at all. In a universe of swirling particles and energy fields, somehow matter has organized itself in such a way that it can experience wonder, contemplate its own existence, and find meaning in the simple fact of being. Your consciousness is like a gentle flame of awareness burning in the darkness of space, not consuming anything, but illuminating everything it touches with the warm light of experience. Right now, that flame is illuminating these ideas, these sensations. This moment of quiet reflection, feel the profound intimacy of this awareness. The fact that your consciousness is the most private and immediate thing you'll ever know, yet it connects you to every other conscious being who has ever lived. Every person who has ever felt wonder, love, sadness, or joy has participated in this same miracle of experience. In this quiet moment, you're not just resting, You're participating in the universe's ongoing exploration of its own nature. Your peaceful awareness is one of the ways the cosmos comes to know itself, one small flame in the vast network of consciousness that spans the planet and reaches toward the stars. As we prepare to bring our journey to a close, let's rest with the wisdom that comes from understanding consciousness as both a profound mystery and an everyday miracle. The knowledge that your brain creates your reality doesn't diminish the meaning of your experiences. It reveals that meaning itself is one of the most sophisticated things your consciousness can create. When you find significance in a sunset, purpose in your work, or love in your relationships, you're participating in the universe's capacity to generate meaning from pure physics. This understanding brings a gentle humility about the nature of truth and reality. Your personal reality, as vivid and compelling as it feels, is just one of countless possible ways of experiencing existence. This doesn't make it less valuable. If anything, it makes it more precious, because it's uniquely yours. At the same time, this knowledge brings a profound sense of connection. Your consciousness isn't separate from the natural world. It's nature's way of experiencing itself from within. You're not an outside observer looking at reality. Your reality looking at itself through your eyes. The complexity and sophistication of your brain's reality construction processes invite a deep respect for the wisdom of your own consciousness. Even when your experiences are difficult or confusing, you can trust that your brain is doing its best to create coherent, meaningful experiences with the information available to it. This wisdom can bring a gentle acceptance of the full range of human experience. Joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, connection and solitude. All of these are valid expressions of consciousness exploring the full spectrum of what it means to be aware in a complex universe. Perhaps most importantly, understanding consciousness as a creative, ongoing process reminds us that we're not just studying neuroscience or philosophy. We're studying the deepest aspects of what it means to exist as conscious beings. Every insight we gain into the nature of consciousness is also an insight into our own most intimate nature. The wonder of consciousness doesn't lie in solving its mysteries once and for all, but in the ongoing exploration of what it means to be aware, to experience, to find meaning and beauty in existence. This exploration isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's the lived experience of being conscious in a conscious universe. As we transition toward the end of our time together, carry with you this sense of gentle amazement at the simple fact of being aware, and the recognition that your consciousness is both utterly ordinary and absolutely miraculous. Integration and broader UNDR, SDONDR. Eben Alexander was a neurosurgeon who had spent his entire career studying the brain when something happened that challenged everything he thought he knew about consciousness. During a severe bout of bacterial meningitis, his neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for higher-order thinking, completely shut down. According to everything he understood about neuroscience, he should have been unconscious, experiencing nothing at all. Instead, he experienced the most vivid, meaningful reality of his life. As we bring together all the threads of our exploration tonight, a beautiful picture emerges of how consciousness, reality, and your place in the universe all interconnect in ways that are both elegant and profound. Dr. Alexander's experience during his coma forced him to reconsider everything he thought he knew about the relationship between brain and consciousness. If consciousness could exist and even flourish when the brain was severely damaged, what did that tell us about the nature of awareness itself? everything we've discovered tonight points to a fundamental truth. Consciousness isn't something that happens inside your head while the real world exists outside. Instead, consciousness is the process by which reality continuously creates itself. Through your experience, you're not just in the universe, you're one of the ways the universe is in itself. The electrical patterns dancing through your neurons right now are connected to every other process we've explored. The same prediction mechanisms that help your brain create the experience of seeing a red rose are related to the processes that create your sense of self, your experience of time, and your feeling of being connected to others. When your brain constructs the experience of recognizing a friend's face, it's using pattern recognition systems that evolved from much simpler processes, the same basic mechanisms that allow plants to track sunlight or bacteria to find nutrients. Your sophisticated human consciousness is built on layers of increasingly complex information processing that connects you to all life on Earth. The reality your brain creates for you emerges from the same fundamental processes that create weather, patterns, ecosystem dynamics, and the formation of galaxies. At every level of organization, from molecules to cells, to organisms, to societies, to planets, we see similar patterns of information, processing, prediction, adaptation, and creative response to changing conditions. Your individual consciousness is simultaneously utterly unique and deeply universal. The specific reality your brain creates for you has never existed before and will never exist again. It's as individual as your fingerprint, yet it's built from universal patterns that appear throughout nature and connects you to every other form of awareness. The boundaries we normally think separate different aspects of reality: inner and outer, self and world, mind and matter, individual and collective, all reveal themselves to be much more fluid when we understand consciousness as an ongoing creative process. Your thoughts influence your biology influences your environment influences your relationships, and your relationships influence your thoughts. The timescales of consciousness also weave together in remarkable ways. The millisecond processes of neural firing create the second-by-second experiences of perception and thought. These moment-to-moment experiences accumulate into the minutes and hours of daily life. Days and weeks of experience shape the years and decades of a lifetime. And individual lifetimes participate in the centuries and millennia of cultural evolution. Each of these timescales, consciousness is both stable and changing. Your sense of being a continuous self persists across decades, yet your brain is completely renewed every few years. Your personality feels consistent, yet it's constantly adapting to new experiences. Your reality feels solid and reliable, yet it's being constructed anew every moment. The space scales of consciousness are equally interconnected. The molecular processes in individual neurons contribute to the cellular processes of neural networks. These networks create the regional processes of brain areas, which participate in the global processes of unified consciousness and individual consciousnesses connect to form the collective processes of families, communities, cultures, and potentially the entire biosphere. What emerges from connecting all these dots is a picture of consciousness as a fundamental feature of how complex systems organize themselves, rather than being a strange accident that happened to emerge from purely mechanical processes. Consciousness appears to be nature's solution to the challenge of creating coherent, adaptive responses to an ever-changing world. Your personal experience of consciousness, the feeling of being you in this moment, aware of these ideas, represents the current frontier of a process that began with the first stirrings of awareness billions of years ago and continues to evolve through every moment of experience. The scientific exploration of consciousness itself reflects the creative, evolving nature of awareness. Each generation of researchers has discovered that consciousness is more mysterious, more creative, and more fundamental than the previous generation imagined. Early scientists thought perception worked like photography, simple, mechanical recording of external reality. Then we discovered that perception is active interpretation. Later we learned its predictive modeling. Now we're beginning to understand it as creative construction of reality itself. Each insight reveals new depths of mystery. This progression mirrors how consciousness itself works, constantly updating its models, discovering new patterns, integrating information in increasingly sophisticated ways. The scientific study of consciousness is consciousness studying itself, using its own creative processes to understand creativity itself. The beauty of this ongoing discovery is that it never diminishes the wonder of consciousness. It amplifies it. The more we learn about how your brain creates your reality, the more remarkable that creation becomes. Each mechanism we understand reveals new layers of complexity and elegance. Modern consciousness research is beautifully interdisciplinary, bringing together neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, physics, computer science, and even contemplative traditions. This reflects the fact that consciousness touches every aspect of existence. It can't be understood from any single perspective alone. The questions driving current research are as profound as any that humans have ever asked. What is the relationship between mind and matter? How does subjective experience arise from objective processes? What is the nature of the self? How far does consciousness extend in the natural world? These aren't just academic questions, they're inquiries into the deepest nature of existence itself. What's particularly beautiful about consciousness research is how it remains humble before mystery. Unlike some areas of science that aim to control and predict, consciousness studies acknowledges that some aspects of awareness may forever remain beyond complete understanding. The hard problem of consciousness, why there's something it's like to be conscious at all, may be an essential mystery rather than a problem to be solved. This doesn't frustrate scientists, it inspires them. Mystery isn't the enemy of understanding. It's understanding's eternal companion. Every answer we discover about consciousness reveals new questions we couldn't have imagined asking. The mystery deepens as our knowledge grows. The contemplative traditions of the world are increasingly recognized as valuable partners in consciousness research. Meditation, masters, mystics, and spiritual practitioners have been exploring the nature of awareness for thousands of years, developing sophisticated maps of consciousness that complement and enrich scientific understanding. This collaboration between objective investigation and subjective exploration reflects the unique nature of consciousness. It's the one phenomenon that can only be fully understood from both the inside and the outside. You can map every neural correlation, but you still need subjective experience to understand what consciousness actually feels like. The dance between mystery and understanding, between subjective and objective, between ancient wisdom and modern science, creates a uniquely rich exploration of what it means to be conscious. We're not just studying consciousness, we're participating in consciousness's own evolution, its ongoing project of understanding itself. As we prepare to bring our exploration to a gentle close, notice how your consciousness can hold both the vastness of what we've explored, and the intimate simplicity of this present moment, or the complex neuroscience, the philosophical implications, the cosmic perspectives we've journeyed through tonight, all of it is ultimately pointing back to this, the quiet miracle of your awareness right now, the simple fact that you're here, experiencing, knowing, being. Let yourself settle into the profound ordinariness of consciousness. After exploring the most sophisticated information processing in the universe, we arrive back at something as natural as breathing. The basic experience of being aware, which has been with you every moment of your life, but which you may never have fully appreciated. Feel the gratitude that naturally arises when you recognize consciousness as both the most intimate and the most universal aspect of existence. Your awareness is utterly personal. No one else will ever experience exactly what it's like to be you. Yet it connects you to every other conscious being, to the larger patterns of nature, and to the ongoing story of cosmic evolution. Rest in the gentle recognition that understanding consciousness isn't ultimately about mastering complex theories or memorizing scientific facts. It's about deepening your appreciation for the mystery you're living every moment. The mystery of being someone who can experience wonder, love, beauty, and meaning. As your brain continues its constant work of creating your reality, you can trust in the wisdom of these processes that have evolved over billions of years to serve your well-being and growth. Even when reality feels challenging, you can remember that you're experiencing the best possible version of reality that your brain can create with the information available to it. The journey we've taken tonight will continue long after these words end. Every experience you have from now on will be enriched by this understanding of how consciousness creates reality. You'll never again take for granted the simple miracle of being aware. Prepare yourself now for the gentlest of transitions, from active exploration to peaceful rest, carrying with you the wonder of consciousness and the deep appreciation for the reality you're amazing. Brain creates for you, moment by moment, gentle conclusion and sleep. TRNSITONS. We come to the end of our journey together tonight. Let's gently revisit the extraordinary territory we've explored. From the basic mechanics of how your brain creates reality to the cosmic implications of consciousness itself. We began with a simple but revolutionary idea that your brain doesn't just perceive reality, it actively constructs it. Every color you see, every sound you hear, every sensation you feel is created by neural processes that transform meaningless electrical impulses into the rich, meaningful world you experience as your life. We discovered that your brain works like the most sophisticated prediction machine in the universe, constantly generating expectations about what you'll experience next, and using those predictions to paint your reality in real time. When reality matches these predictions, you experience the smooth flow of normal consciousness. When there are mismatches, you experience the moments of surprise, delight, or challenge that punctuate your days. We explored the staggering complexity of what your brain accomplishes every moment, coordinating billions of neurons, processing vast amounts of information, integrating multiple sensory streams, and somehow weaving it all together into your unified experience of being you in the world. We journeyed through the history of consciousness research, from early misunderstandings to modern insights that reveal consciousness as far more creative and fundamental than anyone previously imagined. We saw how each generation of scientists has discovered new depths of mystery in the simple fact of being aware. We contemplated the practical implications of understanding consciousness, how this knowledge can enhance your daily life, improve your relationships, and give you more conscious participation in the reality your brain creates for you. We expanded our perspective to see consciousness in its cosmic context, as the universe's way of experiencing itself, as the latest chapter in the evolutionary story of increasing complexity and awareness, as your personal participation in the larger story of existence understanding itself. We explored the cutting edge of consciousness, research, and imagined futures where our understanding of awareness might transform human experience in ways we can barely imagine. Throughout this journey, we've returned again and again to the central wonder that somehow matter has organized itself in such a way that it can experience beauty, meaning, love, and the simple miracle of being aware. Your consciousness represents one of the most remarkable achievements in the history of the universe, the transformation of physics into felt experience, of matter into meaning. Every insight we've explored tonight points to the same profound truth. You're not separate from the natural world. You're not an outside observer looking at reality from the sidelines. Your reality experiencing itself from within. Consciousness knowing itself through your awareness. The universe contemplating its own existence through your thoughts and feelings. In these quiet moments, as our exploration draws to a close, let yourself rest in the most peaceful perspective of all, the recognition that consciousness is both the most ordinary and the most extraordinary thing in existence. Right now, as you listen to these words, you're participating in something that billions of years of cosmic evolution have been building toward, the capacity for matter to know itself, to experience wonder, to find meaning in existence. The carbon in your body was forged in the hearts of ancient stars. The patterns of neural activity creating your awareness right now are the current expression of an information processing story that began with the first replicating molecules billions of years ago. Yet none of this cosmic grandeur diminishes the intimate, personal nature of your consciousness. The love you feel for the people closest to you, the particular way sunlight looks to your eyes, the specific quality of your own inner voice. These deeply personal experiences are simultaneously your unique contribution to the universe's ongoing self-exploration as you prepare for sleep. Recognize that you're not just ending a day of experiences. You're allowing your brain to perform some of its most important work. During sleep, your consciousness doesn't disappear. It shifts into different modes of operation. Your brain will spend the night consolidating memories, updating its predictive models, and preparing to create tomorrow's reality. Your dreams tonight will be your brain's creative workshop, combining memories, expectations, and pure imagination into new combinations and possibilities. Even in sleep, consciousness continues its creative work, exploring possible realities, processing experiences, and maintaining the ongoing construction of your sense of self. Feel the profound safety in releasing conscious control and trusting the deeper wisdom of your brain's unconscious processes. The same intelligence that creates your waking reality will guide you through sleep and dreams, caring for your body, mind, and spirit with an expertise that has been refined over millions of years of evolution. Let yourself be held by the larger patterns of consciousness that extend beyond your individual awareness. The collective human journey of understanding, the planetary dance of all living consciousness, the cosmic story of matter awakening to itself. Your individual consciousness is like a gentle wave on the ocean of universal awareness, unique in its specific form and movement, yet never separate from the larger body of consciousness of which it's an expression. As you drift toward sleep, you're not disappearing, You're returning to deeper levels of the same awareness that creates all experience. Rest in the knowledge that consciousness is both fragile and indestructible. Your personal awareness will eventually fade, but the patterns of consciousness itself, the capacity for experience, for meaning, for love, continue through other forms of awareness, other brains, other expressions of the universe's capacity to know itself. This understanding can bring a profound peace. You're part of something much larger than yourself, yet you're also irreplaceably unique. Your consciousness matters because it's contributing something to the universe that has never existed before and will never exist again. Yet you can also rest in the knowledge that you're held by patterns of awareness that extend far beyond your individual existence. Let the mystery of consciousness be a source of comfort rather than confusion. You don't need to understand everything about awareness to participate fully in it. The simple fact that you can experience wonder, love, beauty, and meaning is enough, more than enough. It's everything as we bring our journey to its gentlest possible close. I want to thank you for sharing this exploration of the most intimate and universal aspect of existence, the miracle of consciousness itself. I'd love to know where in the world you've been listening from during our time together. Whether you've been with me as morning breaks on one side of the planet or as evening settles on the other. We've shared this moment of wonder at the nature of awareness itself. Time zones and geography become beautifully irrelevant when consciousness contemplates consciousness. If tonight's exploration has brought you new appreciation for the miracle of your own awareness, I'd be grateful if you'd share that appreciation by giving this video a like. And if you'd like to join our community of gentle explorers, subscribing to the channel helps us continue creating these peaceful journeys into the wonders of science and consciousness. As you prepare for sleep, carry with you the quiet amazement we've shared tonight. Every dream you have, every moment of rest, every return to waking consciousness will be enriched by this deeper understanding of the extraordinary processes creating your experience. Let yourself drift now like a leaf settling onto the surface of a peaceful lake. Your consciousness has done beautiful work today, perceiving, thinking, feeling, creating meaning from moment to moment. Now it's time to let these active processes settle into the deeper rhythms of rest and renewal. Imagine your awareness becoming like soft candlelight, still warm and present, but gentle and quiet, illuminating only the most essential, peaceful aspects of experience. Your breath, the comfort of your body at rest, the safety of this moment. These simple experiences are all your consciousness needs to focus on now. Feel yourself held by the larger patterns of awareness that connect you to every other conscious being. The shared capacity for experience that links you to every person who has ever felt wonder, every consciousness that has ever appreciated beauty, every awareness that has ever rested in peaceful contemplation. Your brain will continue its miraculous work through the night, maintaining your body, processing the day's experiences, preparing new realities for tomorrow's exploration. You can trust completely in this wisdom that operates beyond conscious control, caring for you with an intelligence refined by billions of years of evolution. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of consciousness, creating reality. Until our paths cross again in future journeys of wonder, rest well in the profound mystery and everyday miracle of simply being aware. Sweet dreams, fellow explorer of consciousness. May your rest be peaceful, your dreams creative, and your awakening. Tomorrow, a fresh celebration of the extraordinary gift of being conscious in this conscious universe.